But first, let's go back to the coalition split. Joining me, one half of the former coalition, National Senator, former Minister, of course, Matt Canavan. Matt, welcome. I'll get into some substantive issues about the legislation in a moment, but this he said, she said, the background briefing from Liberals, your side going on the record with their version of events. You and I have both known each other a long time. We know how the process works. What staggers me is that the Liberal Party has one view, the National Party has a different view. They have a joint meeting of the shadow cabinet, of course. They take a decision. That view shifts against the National Party. Why was there not then a joint party room meeting, as there always is, to thrash out the difference and resolve it?
Look, Peter, I'm still scratching my head, having returned home from Canberra, about that very question. Look, I wasn't involved in all of those meetings. I'm not in shadow cabinet at the moment, so I don't know everything that transpired. What I do know is that was the past week, was the first week that I have been in Canberra for Parliament in an 11-and-a-half-year Senate career where we have not held a joint party room meeting between the Liberal and Nationals parties. So that's what we do. Every Tuesday morning we have such a meeting when the Parliament is sitting, and the principal job of that meeting is to go through the legislation that may be up for debate that week and clear the air. If there's any issues, you have that opportunity. It's almost like a wedding, speak now or forever hold your peace. And we got to Canberra this week with some of the most important legislation that I will have passed or been involved in my Senate career. I think when I look back on it, there's major fundamental changes to freedom of speech, freedom of association, the security and safety of our country. And we didn't hold a joint party room meeting to discuss the matter between our Liberal and National parties. Now, in the Nationals party, I can speak for our party, we spent almost a whole day on Tuesday discussing this in detail, going through the bill almost clause by clause. I just think that's our job. I read the bill when it first came out. That's my job. And there's a whole lot of commentary about politics. A whole lot of people write about it. There's a lot of people who say stuff about me with unnamed quotes. But it's just simple for me. My job is particularly as a senator, is to review and amend, change, argue against legislation that goes through the Parliament. And I felt I've done my job in the past week. I'm very proud of my Nationals colleagues who I think did our job, went through that legislation. We had fundamental problems with it. We made some reasonable suggestions in the Senate that did not even get time for debate. I mean, the Labor Party, they controlled the Senate with the Greens. They guillotined, they stopped debate on this. We didn't even get a chance to discuss our amendments. We didn't get a chance to say, hey, we think this is wrong. This is why. Can we suggest this change? We just got an up and down vote. See you later. Slam, bam, thank you, ma'am. Your rights are taken away.
Okay, but my point being, if the National Party has a position that they cannot support the legislation, the Liberals change their mind, and with their numbers on shadow cabinet, of course, that will be the majority decision. It's always then got to be ratified by either the party room sitting separately or, as is normally the case, the joint party room. And if you're confirming that the first time in 11 years for you that there was no joint party room meeting, the National Party senators can only follow the conscience of their party room where the opposition to the bill is there, right? So I can't see how they broke any convention. I think if they had not done what they had done, they would have been just as much a pilloried figure inside their own party as they are now with Susan Lee. Surely her position, given the comments of your leader, is no longer tenable. Does she have to be removed before there's any chance of the coalition reforming?
Look, the leadership of the Liberal Party is a matter for the Liberal Party, but there are some consequences of the decisions that Susan Lee has made here to sack these ministers. It was just simply inevitable after doing that there was no longer going to be a membership of the Nationals Party in the shadow ministry.
I'll ask you another one then.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you'll give me the line about not commenting on Liberal leadership, which you just did, but in terms of just quickly, the substantive legislation, when you were briefed on the legislation by, I presume, various shadow ministers. How confident were you, given you had read every page of that legislation, how confident were you that they were across the implications, the changes that Labor were making to the legislation almost hour by hour?
Look, there were unanswered questions, Peter. There were very simple questions put that just couldn't be answered. For example, in particular, there's a provision of this bill which says that the serious harm could amount to economic harm in the definition of hate crime. So you could be accused of a hate crime if you do something which just harms people economically. So I asked, well, what happens if you organise an economic boycott of a country's products, say Russia's products for invading Ukraine? And there was no answer about, is that a hate crime? It seemingly meets the definition because you're doing so on a national basis. I mean, I participated in a boycott of Woolworths a few years ago. I was very proud to do so. And I think every Australian has a right to decide what products they buy. And it just seemed ridiculous to me that we would have legislation that would potentially capture that kind of political response, which is perfectly legitimate. And because we couldn't get those answers, that's why the Nationals Party moved those amendments. All this detail's been lost now, but we moved some sensible amendments to say, look, let's restrict this legislation to just groups that are advocating for excusing involved in violence. That's the issue here. But instead, we now have an incredibly broad piece of legislation that is open for abuse.
Well, some Liberals said to me, Conservative Liberals of course, but they said to me that they're not confident that their people, their shadow ministers, were across the detail of the legislation, and they are gravely concerned about what went through the Parliament. I note, though, they didn't have a chance to raise that because they did not have a Liberal Party meeting and they did not have a joint party room meeting, as we've confirmed. Thank you, Matt. I wish it was otherwise, but that's where we end up tonight.